dark wood and some special wood. I want to go over there and take one. Even if it's that big, you can still cut it, and make lumber out of it and make wood out of it. You don't have to have a 30-inch log. It can be small and be beautiful. And so I like cutting the smaller logs on my smaller band, so we call that micro milling. But great question, Justin. Any other questions you guys thinking?
Yeah. How wide's the cutting through?
Oh, great question. Yeah, that's a great. So this is rated for 36 inches, but
35.
35. So between the guides, we can cut 35. You remember what our last mill was, Tom?
Here.
27 and a half.
How much?
The last mill we had was 27 and a half between the guides, the cook sawmill. But this is 35 between the guides, which means we can cut effectively a 44-inch log,
Wow.
which is big. So this is a 30-inch log, so we could, it could be quite a bit bigger. Thank you for your question. Yes, Patrick.
I just wonder is there? I guess it depends on the wood, but the average time for it to dry and age until it's ready to be worked, and then is there? I imagine there's some kind of oven or process where you could speed that up if you want.
Oh yeah, great questions. Great. So the rule of thumb, from Tennessee folklore is a year an inch. So if he's cutting it 2¼ inches, that would be 2¼ years. But what we've noticed is that in the summer in Tennessee, if you have a well-ventilated area, things will dry like crazy very quickly. And especially like this barn here in the upper room, which we really can't put wood up in there anymore because the building's falling down. It was built in 1875. But if you were to store it up there, when you have ventilation through the floor and on the sides, you can effectively dry anything in a year over the summer.
Wow.
So it's really like a May to September time frame, and it's dry. But a lot of commercial operations, and this is where we differ, what they'll do is they'll put it in a kiln and they'll bake it, effectively baking it in a dehumidified, hot environment. And what happens is you change the color of the wood and you mute the bright contrasting colors. And it's like when you take an apple and you put it in the oven and you bake it. Well, that apple turns brown. It might taste sweeter, but it'll turn brown. And so those are great questions, Patrick. So we don't use a kiln. We air dry everything, and that's problematic for people building. Say you're building cabinets for your kitchen. You're not going to want to come here and get our wood because you're going to want that wood from a kiln because you want it to be very stable. But if you're a craftsman that knows how to manage the instability of wide boards, which a lot of them do, basically putting them on sliding joints and sliding mortises, then that's not a problem. And you can end up with something that's not baked, that's really wide, that's beautiful, and that you can put right into service. So great question, Patrick. Melanie?
What's this kind of bluey greeny?
Oh yeah, Tom, do you want to answer that, Tom or William?
Bluey greeny?
Yep.
Probably from the blade.
Yeah.
Like if you cut oak, it'll turn black, so that's deciding to turn green. Probably from the blade, probably perhaps the soap, but it is the sapwood.
Yeah.
And the sapwood is pretty much what's rots first. And a lot of people like sapwood. It depends if it's indoor or outdoor. But that's probably just the blade and the metal reacting to the sapwood with the soap he's got on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably all it is.
Yeah, I'm running water, so I've got a water tank up here that I let drip, so it keeps the blade lubricated, keeps it from getting hot, but it does do some things like that. And you'll notice this dust here is really thick and really black, and it kind of gets everywhere sometimes, but it's better than your blade getting really hot and breaking. So
Goes all quick too.
yeah,
Yeah,
Hit any fences yet?
I've hit one nail. That's just a nail.
yeah,
Crazy.
he's doing a lot better than we did. He's
Get
standing
them
on
city
a
logs. You get them city logs.
Yeah.
You got fences growing in them.
Yeah. He's standing on our shoulders. So one thing you'll notice on this log, it's got a void here, which is great artistically. It's solid on one side, so this would be good for river tables. But a lot of times what happens is people will fertilize their lawns, and they'll put a lot of chemicals down, and so the logs will get minerals. They'll get excess minerals in them, and salts. And so that will kill a lot of the trees that are in people's yards are being killed by the weed and feed and the fertilizers, and they're causing the wood to get diseased and get hollow like this. And so a lot of mineral stains. We'll cut a lot of logs with minerals in them, and these are from people's yards. And I think it's a lot to do with the fertilizers and the impurities that are coming into that environment. And so, but it makes for very beautiful anomalies in the wood. So a lot of times, it's kind of like a diamond is created from years and years of pressure, but when trees are in an urban environment, they're being tormented by the traffic going by the, just the city growing up around them. But it can result in some very beautiful defects in the wood that really tell a story. When you have a table out there and you have, like, I'll show you an example here, is you see how how the wedge was taken out right over here? When a tree is cut, you cut a wedge and then you cut the back of the wedge and it drops, and this is the hinge wood here. And so you could build a table with the notch and the hinge like this board right here. This is a better example. So you see, this is where the notch, the wedge was taken out, and then that's where the back of it was cut. Now that's the hinge wood there where it fell. And so you can get the table to tell a story about how the tree was taken down. There's a lot of interesting things like that you sort of only can do in a sawmill. Most wood you'd buy, it's all squared off, and that's, it doesn't tell the story. You lose the story along the way. But we like to keep the story intact. Like we've gotten a lot of logs from famous people. And so it's nice to say, well, that was Tom Frith's log, or that was, who was the other guy?
Al Gore.
Al Gore, yeah, Al Gore's log. He had a bunch of logs. And it's fun to tell the stories of the different people, and, this log belonged to so-and-so, because you're sitting around the table and we all love a good story, don't we? We don't want to be bored, and we're tired of sitting on the internet because that's gotten to be no fun. And so we want to sit around and tell stories, so the wood can help you do that. Great question. Any other questions?
Why do you cover some of these piles and other ones not?
Yeah, so the idea is no matter how big a building you've got, you're going to fill it. And so this barn is, several thousand square feet, but it didn't take long to fill it. So you gotta put it somewhere till you can use it. Yeah. And so the best we've come up with is to get these stacks, and Tom designed what call them bunks. And so he came up with this idea with the cinder blocks and the beams, and then we have to put something on top. So we didn't know what to do, so we came up with the roofing tin. And so if you got a better idea, come up to me and tell me, because we're just sort of groping our way through this. But
Do you see any roofing tin going back
yeah,
in?
we need some 3-foot-inch wide roofing tin, Dale. And several strips of it. So he's in the roofing business. So
Use a lot of that pine for covers.
yeah, we used the pine for covers, and that was excellent. We still have a lot of that pine, and I always thought that pine rotted very quickly, but that pine is still around. I mean, we still got it over there. We're using it, and so we'll get these really big pine logs, and we'll put them. We'll get the boards and just put them on top. But yeah, good question. Any other?
But the reason why we cover it is to just kind of protect from the elements a little bit, and like the Osage doesn't really need that. You can't mess with it. So
yeah,
to cover it, it's all you'll be protecting from is rain, and it'll dry okay.
And the
I mean,
sun too, because if you leave
Yeah.
a board in the sun like that one,
Right.
you'll have 1 foot checks in it in probably 2
Right.
hours.
So that's why we cover walnut, oak, maple, that kind of stuff. But Osage, it does okay. So we don't generally put a cover on that.
Once you have a log that's been felled and you seal your ends to keep it from rotting, how long would you say it's safe to let it sit before you actually mill it?
well, I mean, it's like, how fresh you want your bread. It's nice when you get it right out of the oven, right?
Right.
I mean, that's always going to taste the best. But, sometimes we won't get to logs like for several years. Like there'll be a tree company and they've got a pile of logs and all the sapwood's rotten. All the sapwood from here over is just gone. But inside of that log is aged chocolate walnut, and it's gorgeous. And so, you get to it when you get to it. And, and he's only one person. I'm not out here working with him. He's out here. I mean, sometimes I'll come out and help. But, he's got to get the roofing tin for the covers. He's got to get the logs. He's got to help the customers. He's building his own stuff. And one of the things we like to do is help churches and charities around town. If they need a table, we'll donate wood for that. So if you know of any charity situations, single mom needs a table, the church needs a podium, anything. just come and see me. We want to donate and help people do that. But he's only one person, and so he can't get around and do it all. So you just get to it when you get to it, you know. And if the wife, if Melanie says, "Honey, we need this," then we just sort of drop everything and do what she says, because we're the head, but she's the neck, you know. And so that's sort of how it works. And William's married; he's got a wife over there. He married my daughter, and so they're doing things, and so you just get to it when you get to it, and and we're not like a commercial operation with 5 employees that show up every day or something. It's just going to get done when it gets done, and sometimes we have to drop what we're doing and do the garden, or so. Yeah, great question though. Thanks for posing that. Anyone else got a question?
What's your favorite log to saw?
Our favorite wood. Well, I'm a particular fan of Osage orange. I have a fetish with. It's like metal. It's like working with metal. It's like working with aluminum. You can cut it with carbide, and the blade stays sharp. And I love Osage orange. That's probably my favorite. Next would be walnut, but you really love all the woods. And one of the things that you don't really count on when you get in on this is the smells. So you'll be cutting. Did anyone smell the walnut when it was being cut? Yeah, what was that like?
Invigorating. It's
Yeah.
great, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pasture.
Yeah. The smells are really good, and the woods that smell amazing are sassafras.
Oh yeah.
It smells like root beer. And then when the logs are older, they ferment, and it smells like Worcestershire sauce. And then the walnut has a really heavenly smell. And oak, a lot of the oaks have just an amazing smell. And you think about, they age like wines and whiskeys and different things in oak barrels, and it's because of the taste and the flavor of the wood. And so those flavors are quite intoxicating. You don't really count on that when you're going to saw a log, just how, it's like, oh, it's so good. And I can smell it right.
Aromatherapy.
It's aromatherapy, yes. Yeah. And so and that smoke, that sawdust sort of wanders off for miles. The neighbors haven't complained yet, but it's one of my neighbors here. But you might smell something someday, Justin, and you go, "That's Paul," and you know when to come over and you can take this sawdust and you can make barbecue with it. Like you can take this sawdust and put it around your barbecue and get all your food on the barbecue to have this amazing smell. So it's probably not real healthy, but it tastes good. And so we get a lot of people that do barbecue competitively. They'll come and buy the walnut, the sassafras, the cherries cut-offs, and they'll have these barbecue competitions. And we've gotten some real barbecue snobs in here that tell me exactly what they do and how they like it, and they want the wood to be green and not dry and all that because it makes more smoke. So
I like cedar. I love cutting cedar.
Okay.
It's like butter. There's no hang-ups. The knots don't bother the blade.
Blade
right
never
through,
gets dull.
and that smell is fantastic.
Yep.
I spent about a week when we first got the mill just cutting cedar, and you could smell it from the road coming in here. It smelled so good, so good.
Yeah, and cedar is actually it was misnamed when they named it cedar. It was actually juniper, and so it's not cedar. Well, Eastern red cedar is really Eastern red juniper, but it has an unbelievable smell. So, great questions. Keep them coming if you got more. All right, so that's it for the questions. Okay, so thanks, William. Thanks for the log. So we'll wind it up there.
All right, so
the raffle.
If you haven't put your name on a little slip, put it in the hat.
Yeah, we got a door prize. It's a piece of wood, as you might have guessed. But you don't know which piece.
Is it the one that says $400 on it?
Yeah, that's it. Dan.
I'm John Maddox.
Hey, Paul Campaign. It's
Hi,
nice
Paul.
to meet you, John. I'll turn this off. I think we're.
The raffle tickets are inside there on the bin.
Well, you want to